All right, welcome to the next episode of Voice AI podcast, where we discuss the future of voice AI. Today, I'm super excited to host Wayne Butterfield, who is a partner at ISG Automation, where he's responsible for AI, automation, and contact center transformation. Welcome, Wayne. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, David. Great to be on the podcast. Really looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very interesting topic, but before that, Wayne, can you expand on your role, what your company does, and your focus?
Yeah, so I work for ISG. We're the market leaders in the advisor community for the buy-in of people, process, and technology. So we have about a 60% market share when a large organization uses an advisor to buy one of those things with service providers. I've worked here for 8 years now and worked with the service provider community at large. So it's everyone from your Wipros and your Infosys to your Cognizant, your Foundevers, your Citels. The list is endless. The $1 trillion ITO, BPO, outsource, contact center, you name it, market that has been in and around and up for about the odd 20, 30 years.
Wow. Okay. So you basically help them to go through digital transformation and solutioning, right? And in particular with AI, this is a crazy time for that, given what AI is doing.
Absolutely, and that's one of the challenges that you've got people buying, often billion-dollar contracts sometimes with a service provider for the next 10 years. We have all of this AI stuff everywhere, and when you're signing a contract for that much money for that length of time, you kind of need a crystal ball to be able to say, am I getting a good price today? And is that still a good price in 5 years when agentic AI is here? Is that still a good price when service is software in the next 5 to 10 years? And that's where the advisor community comes in to help the buyer and the service provider figure out what they should be selling and how they should price it, what someone should be paying and how they should contract.
Oh, okay. I don't envy you because it's the most uncertain time, I guess, for that industry, right? And I think one of the things we wanted to discuss today is how do BPOs navigate this? The call center BPOs navigate this uncertainty, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's happening in their mindset, how they think about the risks with voice agents, the voice AI agents, right? How this is going to end up impacting their business. So yeah, I'm very interested in this topic. I think everyone.
And it's a great topic, and it's such an interesting thing because we've been buying outsourcing services for a certain way for the last 20 odd years. Most organizations are in their second, third, fourth iteration of buying an outsourced service. Some organizations have got half the business outsourced at this point. It's generally been led by procurement, and it's more often than not being priced with a bums on seats, price per hour, human first workforce. Okay. Over the last 5 years, automation started to play a role. So we started to change the delivery mechanisms for some service providers so that it's people and technology. Now that's not universal, but procurement still want to generally compare apples with apples. And the easiest way to do that is, where's your location? How much is your resource? And what is that price per hour? And what am I going to get for that price per hour? And so despite the fact that there are advancements in technology, I think some of the service providers are still drawn back by the lack of maturity of the buyer. And one of the things that I've spent certainly the last year thinking through is, how do we educate the buyer? Who should the buyer be of transformational services? And how do the service providers price and also sell? So there's so many different moving parts here right now, and it's predominantly as a result of voice AI, certainly in the contact center stuff.
Okay. Yeah, and like in my experience, when like I have seen like since we are doing business with BPOs as well, I've seen different sort of feedbacks from different BPO leaders, right? And I would categorize or group them a bit differently. Like there are certain BPOs that, when asked about voice AI agents, their response is like, yeah, don't talk to me about that. This is a big risk for us, and like we don't want to ever integrate them in
Mhm.
our offerings, right? So that's like one group. The other group is they they are a bit hesitant in the beginning, but then a bit more open to discuss, to better understand, because they understand it's inevitable, I guess, and they want to understand if there is a role for them there. And the third is very open, like they are okay. There are different sort of use cases where they find them interesting, such as, for example, seasonality, right? Like if there is a seasonality, they want to have some backup options on how they can scale their operations. And perhaps, these agents, the AI agents, might help them there.
Mhm.
What is your view? Like, is this similar to what you see, or why is there like that's not clear for me actually? Why is there
Yep.
this different sort of uh, feedback and perception?
So I do think there's three types. I think the first two I agree with. The first one being you've got your people-heavy organizations. Their revenue is people. They're not necessarily technology firms. They're very good at contact center, but they're not necessarily that great at innovating and deploying technology. And there's a lot of clients that want those. Okay, they're not that interested in transformation. They just want to know that they've got 300 people and it's going to cost them this much. So you do have those providers. I think you're always going to have those providers. And for certain clients in certain industries. The second one is, as you say, providers who are both providing the technology but are also experts with people as well. So you've got this human workforce that they can complement with technology because they have enough developer and IT experience to actually be credible at deploying technologies such as automated training or co-pilots. Maybe they can make the most out of conversational platforms, IVRs, etc. So they come in as a package. You are buying an outcome, which might be a transformation. It's X number of people. It's these technologies. Will guarantee these prices. So you have this growing number. It's only a small number of credible organizations that kind of are in this space that are doing it at scale. And then I think your last one is really interesting. I actually think it's technology firms who are trying to come into the contact center. And now the example I'll use is IBM. Did you know that IBM has a BPO practice, that they have contact center expertise, and that they will take over BPO contracts, existing BPO contracts for their clients, and they will basically automate the hell out of it? Okay, because they're not a people organization. They're a technology organization. They don't want a load of people. They want Watson everywhere. They want IVRs, voice IVRs. They want AI agents. They want everything, right? They want it to be technology first. So technology first BPOs, people first BPOs that can do technology well, and then people first technology. Yeah, let's not go there. Those are my three buckets. So very, very similar to yours, mate. Just that
That's
last one's
that's
different.
that's very interesting, actually. Yeah, that might explain a lot of things. I think there is also like a dimension of the industry they are in, right?
Mhm.
Like if they are more in the regulated market, let's say, the bar for AI to get to that market may be higher.
But
So and like it's more like unclear, uncertain how AI is gonna enter that market, right? And maybe the perception in those markets is a bit different. But yeah, I think your grouping makes a lot of sense. Like, do you see a desire for BPOs that are very human, like, or people focused in their services to go up and become more like technology focused? Do you see that as their like strategy?
I think, I think there's going to be some BPOs who are never going to evolve. Never going to evolve. There is another bucket, your Genpacks of this world, who are betting on a significant agentic workforce of the future. And they are for both contact center and BPO. And they are very, very forward thinking. And they are already thinking about the commercial models that they would have to put in place, the foundations. I mean, these guys are the experts in finance. The BPO industry now, loads of great insight. It used to be mess for less, right? We'd outsource it. Yes, it's not going to be that great, but it's cheaper. Okay, we'll get this labor arbitrage benefit. Over 20 years, they've become experts in industry. They've become experts in utilizing technology, in process. Certain BPOs now actually know an industry and industry processes better than each individual company in that industry. So if you think, insurance, for example, everyone thinks that they have their own secret sauce. Look, a claims process, a loss adjuster, all of these processes are 95% the same, regardless of which company you're working in. The BPOs know this, they see this, right? So they are actually the experts. If we think about an agentic workforce, they know the processes so well, they have all of that insider knowledge. They're going to be the people that are probably more likely to be able to train an agentic workforce for an industry. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that every industry, every BPO is going to be brilliant in every industry, but you have pockets of specialisms in many of the BPOs where they're very, very strong in a certain vertical, in a certain industry, in a certain process type. So I think, because of that, because they are invested in it, you are going to see a significantly heavy technology first service delivery in the future, and people will literally just be round the edges. I think this is 5 to 10 years out, though. I don't think it's tomorrow. I think it's 5 to 10 years out. The world may move fast. Organizations, the enterprise, risk, compliance, all of these things don't move that fast. The other thing I think is really interesting, and of course you guys will be, you're at the forefront of this, but the real-time translation and accent smoothing. So you mentioned about, regulatory, processes and outsourcing. Outsourcing went through a phase of globalization where it was originally India, now it's everywhere. Every BPO has, I've got 70 offices, 90 offices. All of it was for language and time zone. As AI, in the voice channel, outside of the voice channel, becomes even better, why do you need 90 different locations to deliver service across 30 different languages? Other than the time zone, there is no real benefit to it when you have technology like yours that can remove the language challenges, even in voice. So again, I think the other evolution is, yes, they're going to be more technology focused, but I think they're going to be able to invest in technology because they're going to go from global to more centralized, cut their costs, create more hub and spoke type offerings, and then they're going to be able to invest a bit more in their R&D. So I think there's a few different things that are at play here that will enable this next shift. I call it BPO 4.0, and it's what I envisage happening over the next 5 years.
BPO 4.0, okay. Wayne, I have this hypothesis that, look, as AI enables easier sort of serving of customer requests and more scalable, like from one side, you might think that it's gonna just make it easier to scale and process everything, but from another perspective, it's gonna increase the number of requests coming from customers, right? So it's
Brilliant.
like if I know that it's easy to call into uh, a service provider and get my issue resolved, I'll probably do it more frequently than I used to do. So do you share that idea that actually the number of calls might actually increase over time as it becomes cheaper to sort of serve them?
I think I don't know whether calls necessarily should. When I think about it, I think I think brands have been very reactive. Customer service at the moment is very reactive. I think where you're going to see increases in volumes is um, proactive customer service. I think we'll start to see that kind of grow in, and this is something I've been talking about for well over a decade, but just never really got there, because everyone historically has seen customer support as a big cost, a burden, something we don't want to do, cost loads of money. Let's try and make it as cheap as possible. We're getting to a point now. I don't understand this now. For most brands, the only time they ever speak to their end customer is when they phone them in their contact center. That is gold dust. If we can mine every single one of those conversations for the intent, sub-intent, for competitive analysis, for product insights, and we can start to use that information and start to feed back into the rest of the business. Not just, hey, we did 1 million calls, but we did 1 million calls, 73% of them were about this. We've got 12% talking about this. There you go, product. We've got a problem. The reason why we received 200,000 calls was because your product is faulty with this. Now, it's not that the contact center hasn't tried to be an insight center, but again, we haven't had the technology. Yep, we haven't really invested the money and the resources. And so, I've seen teams of 20, 30 people, manually listening to 3-4% of all contacts on a monthly basis and got a statistically viable, well, it's not really. Maybe it is at the high level, but once you get into the low level, the rationale, the reasons, there's something missing there. So I think we shouldn't reduce the human elements of voice completely. Whether or not that means more people are going to phone in because they're getting a better service, I don't know. But I do think that there is going to be more reasons why we would want people to speak. And I don't think we should see it as such a big cost. Or we shouldn't see it as a cost center. We should see it as gold dust. Probably the best insight that we can get. We should be asking people to phone us. And we've never done that before. I've never worked in a brand where it's wanted people to phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard an opinion which I really like, at least the framing of it, that it's like especially in the voice side, like the phone support is an afterthought. It, as you say, like it's viewed as a cost center, but in the future, as technology enables it, it's going to be seen as as part of your product, right? It's a feature. Like you want to make it possible for your users to give exactly like those insights immediately, right? It's like an insight center, right? And it seems like AI is like really designed to extract these insights. I mean, there are companies who are like, I think the category is probably conversational intelligence, right? There are companies who are doing this, but I don't know the scale of adoption of such products today, and you will have better visibility into that. But it seems to be like a no-brainer that look, we can analyze the conversations and group the insights based on some criteria and so on, and sort of give this to the product teams. But I think you really need to have a robust AI for that. It's just very, very hard to do it without Gen AI, right?
Definitely. I think one of the challenges is there are so many things in the contact center that you could be doing with AI now. Everything from dynamic scheduling of your workforce management to forecasting of your volumes to conversational AI to Gen AI to agent assist to your IVRs. It's like the contact center budget didn't suddenly times X. It didn't multiply 10X. Yet we have all of these innovations on all of the core parts of the contact center all happening at the same time. Like, where do you put your limited budget? Most contact centers never have enough budget because they've always been seen as a cost. Where do you put it? It's like there's 5, 10, 15 places right now where you could, in theory, get value. And again, that comes back to the BPOs. Like, why would you want to individually invest in those 15 areas when you have you're going to have to become an expert in that. You're going to have to engage with 3, 4, 5, 10 different, technology suppliers, big rollouts, big expensive projects, procurement of licenses, etc. Or work with your service provider who's already done it 7 times, already has the partnerships, already should have market leading pricing, and work with them strategically to transform so that you get access to all 5, 10, 15 of the latest AI innovations. That, I think, is where we are, or where we should be over the next 2 to 3 years. There's too much going on for a contact center executive to try and do it all themselves. They either do 2 or 3 things well, or they have to work with a service provider to transform, but they have to do it strategically. And I think one of the things that we've not seen historically is that when you work with a service provider, they're ring-fenced. They can do some stuff. Hey, we want you to be more efficient. We want you to do stuff. But guess what? You're never going to get access to our website. We've got our own chatbot over here that you're never going to touch. Our systems are our systems. You can access them and don't start asking for changes. Okay, so he's like, I need you to transform, but you're not touching our business. It's like those 2 things don't go along. So that's what I mean about being strategic. And I think what you have to get in the future is the service provider has to have incisions into the core areas of business to be able to actually influence change and have a voice so that they can transform. Otherwise, we're going to be, we're going to be here in the next 5 to 10 years having exactly the same conversation. So something has to change. The strategic importance of service providers has to be raised. And I think if it's raised, then we'll see transformation. If it's not, it's going to be a slow burn for a while.
Interesting. So I think what you're saying, at least the way I understand, is that like the service provider, the clients or enterprises see BPO call centers as like, hey, like I have a problem with, number of agents. So I hire this BPO and they expand the number of agents for me. It's like expand my workforce, right? But if they start thinking about them as that plus technology providers and like the company that will help me actually with AI, with tuning this and integrating and then tuning and then maintaining these new sort of technologies for me, that's a very different conversation. And I think like probably that's where Genpact is going, right? Like you brought them as an example. Like
and your IBM as well. So your IBMs, your Genpact, you give UNSs, there are a number of providers, Cognizant and others. There are a number of providers who would prefer to have the seat at the table. They have the experience. They want to transform, but they've been hamstrung by lack of strategy, strategic thinking, ring-fenced, seen as a outsourced provider versus a strategic transformation partner. I think that's got to change. And I think it's starting to change. The issue is, how do you price it and how do you compare? So how do you compare one transformation and the price and cost to another transformation, price and cost? Because there's so many different things, like what tools are included? What's the value from these tools? Do you own the IP? Do you not own the IP? It's like there's so many different things now. It's really difficult to price them up. Whereas, procurement will be like, hey, price per hour, $9.50, great. Price per hour, $8.73, excellent. You're cheaper. You win the business. Okay. The reality is, they're either going short on the margins or there's something somewhere that they may not be getting. It might be a different location. It might not get all the bells and whistles. The spans may be different. There's probably reasons why some of these prices are different, but it's easy to compare. It's really difficult when you get into transformation. How do you price that? The agentic world, 5-year contracts, at the end of 5 years. And I think the way I look at it is, what's your target price? How much does it cost you right now? What's your target price? Let's create a roadmap to get there, so that we know at the end of 5 years, there is a guaranteed outcome. And then let's make it win-win, right? If the service provider excels better than what's expected, you both win. You get extra cost savings, they get extra revenue. It's like, let's incentivize the providers to actually want to automate the hell out of everything, as opposed to guarding the revenue, because they know if they deploy automation and you're paying price per hour, like they're eroding their own revenues. That is not good. That's not a good thing. And that's why I often get to the end of these service provider contracts. They've delivered their innovation, which is a 5% reduction of cost year on year. The service is pretty much identical to what it was at the start of the contract. No transformation, because they were never incentivized commercially to want to transform. If anything, they needed and wanted it to be the exact same, because that is how they earn the most revenue.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I would be very interested to learn like what new sort of monetization, or not monetization, just like pricing structures come to the play especially for AI, right? Because like when you think about AI cost as well, it's going down like pretty significantly. And how do you sort of come up with the right, like especially for 5-year contracts, right? That's great. Yeah, I think like there are certain companies that are doing it outcome sort of first pricing, right? Like number of tickets, but that's not what you're saying, right? Or like pay me per like result ticket. I think Zendesk was doing something like that, but that's not what you're saying actually. If you're thinking,
the ITO world has actually been a lot more mature on kind of outcome-based commercials, price per ticket, etc. They have sorted that out. The BPO industry, for service, process, contact center, it's a bit of a laggard in doing that. As I say, some of it I think is procurement, and the inability to compare service providers easily by going down that route. But I think commercially we've got to think in different ways. And I recently put pen to paper on 3 things that I think we're 3 different types of commercial models that I think will be the future, that are very focused on transformation and I think guaranteed outcomes from a price perspective, while maintaining a level of service, etc., for your clients, is the kind of way to go. And there are examples like IBM who will basically sign up for that. Genpact who will sign up for that. WNS who will sign up for a guaranteed outcome on the back of an assessment. They will sign up for a guaranteed outcome. And as I say, there's obviously some wiggle room usually in that. They're so sure, because they've done this so many times now, that they can guarantee that they are going to generate this level of saving. That I think is the, if that is the commercial model, it's not like how much something costs, it's how much we will save you year on year from where you are right now. That is a completely different commercial model to what people are doing right now.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. When you said you had published these article.
This one, not yet. I literally have it in my. I have it written. I just need to top and tail it. But there's a few different ones that are coming out. One of them is a BPO 4.0. It does talk about the commercials. It talks about how do you contract as well. Like, how do you contract with a service provider who needs to deliver a service while transform your operations? Like, again, even that is a lot more complex than just hit this service level. This is your price per hour. It's like even the contracting is different gravy as we start to think about all of this. So everything is changing, from the contracts to the commercials to the providers to the technology. Like, it is literally non-stop change.
Yeah, no, I'm very interested to read that. Looking forward to it. But look, I think this is a top priority discussion, top of the mind discussion. Pretty much every meeting I am in, or every podcast, or every business meeting I have in the last couple of months. So I'm so grateful that you had a chance to come to the podcast and share your thoughts, your insights. And I'm looking forward to the BPO for all article.
I will
That's
send you it, David. Yeah,
the
absolutely.
name of it is really good.
And you can see I'm very passionate about this. Like, I think, I spent a lot of time looking at it, thinking it through. And so I have a lot of opinions, and I've always been at the forefront of change in the kind of world of customer service, deploying AI back in 2009, RPA in 2010, social media service, online chat, digital messaging. Like, I've been really early in a lot of these things. So, think betting on where this world is going is something that I've spent my career doing. So this is not a hunch. This is the reality. We are going to see a systematic change. And I would also bet the BPO industry becomes no more, only because the BPO industry turns into ITO, because it is predominantly going to be technology that drives process in the future. And again, I'm thinking this is kind of, 5 to 10 years minimum for a lot of this stuff to actually go through the wash and start to become cookie cutter. Because even though we do have the odd provider doing the odd thing, it's not the norm. Everyone's got an example of where they're doing something different. Nobody has got every example where it's this new world. So interesting times, David.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. Looking forward to it, Wayne, and thanks again for coming today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.